I'm always learning from the kitchen and they're always learning from me. But Kim always told me that the gardener is the first chef. And so that's the way we try to do things here at the Zin House, is instead of the chefs coming to me and telling me, we need this, this, this and this, I go to them and I say, hey guys, this is what's thriving in Mudgee today. How are you going to use it? Can you celebrate it?
This week, Dirty Linen is spending a week in Mudgee at Lowe Wines, getting hopefully a complete portrait of all the many things that go on at this vineyard, winery, restaurant, garden, orchard. It's all happening here. Our guest today is Lydia Blocksidge. She is the head gardener at Lowe. Lydia, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thank you, Dani. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm super excited to be actually in Mudgee, sitting with you in Zin Restaurant, for which you grow so much of the produce. Give us a little bit of a sense of the role of head gardener at Lowe.
Yeah, okay. So head gardener at Lowe. So my role encompasses quite a lot of different things, but it has a big focus on the Zin House restaurant and really collaborating with the chefs here at the Zin House. So we really want guests who dine at the Zin House to experience the regional seasonal cuisine and produce of the Mudgee region. So I work really closely with the chefs to kind of curate the menu and work together to share the story of the produce that thrives throughout the seasons here. So Mudgee has really defined seasons. So we get really cold and frosty in the winter, and then we get really hot and dry in the summer. So the scope of what we're able to grow is huge, and we really want to share that story of seasonal produce with our guests.
And so when people come here and, they're usually fortunate enough to have a chat to you before they dine, what will you show them? Like, what does it look like? What will they see?
Yep. So when guests come here, we've just started offering a couple of months ago at the beginning of the winter, we started offering garden walks as a way to welcome guests to the restaurant. And they're currently only offered on weekdays, so Thursdays, Fridays and Mondays. And I take them for a 15-minute walk through the gardens. So I introduce them to the Zin House herb garden, which is a garden primarily made up of fruit trees. So we have stone fruit, an abundance of peaches, nectarines, plums, apricots. There's olives in there, and then an understory of woody and perennial and culinary herbs. And then I take them through the market garden. So that's where we grow a lot of our annual herbs and vegetables. Winter in Mudgee is an amazing time for your leafy greens. So things like salads and lettuces and kales and rainbow chards, your brassicas, cabbages, broccoli, cauliflower, and then of course your root veg. So radishes, beetroots, carrots. So I take them and just share with the guests what it takes to grow a head of cauliflower or a head of broccoli, and they can see how they're growing and really interact and engage with that food, and then come back to the restaurant and see how the chefs have utilised and celebrated that produce.
Yeah, so I love cauliflower and I often buy it at my local fruit shop in Melbourne, and occasionally it's $3.99 and sometimes it's $7.99, and it's usually got a few leaves on it but not that many. So what am I not seeing when I just pick up a cauliflower pretty thoughtlessly and think about what I'm going to cook with it?
Yeah, this is one of my favourite topics, Dani, and it's something I really try to talk to the chefs a lot about so that they can and I can share that with the guests. So a cauliflower has an abundance of gigantic, almost elephant ear sized leaves around the head of cauliflower. The leaves actually make up about 2/3 of the plant itself, and the same goes for broccoli and cabbage as well. But of course we harvest the single head in the centre of those things. So brassicas really need those big leaves. They act as solar panels to accumulate the energy from the sun to produce the really beautiful heads. So there's an abundance of leaves that have equal nutrient density in them and taste almost just like the crop themselves, that can be eaten and celebrated in the same way. So yeah, it's pretty incredible.
And how long would it take to grow one of those big, beautiful heads of cauliflower that I saw down there?
Yeah, so the collies we planted at the end of April, and we are now, the beginning of October. We started harvesting them the very end of August. So it's almost, it's at least 5 months here in Mudgee. We have a period of very cold, frosty months, June and July, where the plants really slow down their growth. So it may not take that long in other regions that get a little more warmth during the winter, but for us it takes 5 to 6 months to get a head of cauliflower. So, and that's with the addition of beautiful compost teas to really support that growth and of the crop.
Yeah, I mean, they really need to be honoured when all that time and work goes into them. And I love thinking about the leaves as solar panels. It's, very, very cool and, very vivid as an image. So another thing that I noticed walking around with you is that there are quite different styles of growing that you're playing around with. Can you talk us through some of those, different methods?
Yeah, absolutely. So the market garden here is still relatively young. So it's a year since we've started growing in that space, and we are still experimenting with what works best for us given our capacity and what we can manage overall. So we've got a method that's quite traditional market gardening. So we utilise weed mat to suppress the weeds, and then nets over the top of the brassicas were growing in the weed mat. So we throw the nets over the top. White cabbage moth is an awful pest, so that was to protect the brassicas from the white cabbage moth when they were still young, and to protect those leaves from being defoliated by the white cabbage moth and consequently not being able to accumulate that energy they need to produce the head. The other methods that we're trialling, there's more of a permaculture approach in one section of the garden, so that's where we really celebrate diversity, and we've planted at least 6 different crops in that space, all growing together, and all of those crops serve different functions. They all reach maturity at different times throughout the season, and they all give and take different nutrients from the soil. And then we have a method down in our garlic bed. So garlic's a long-term crop, so it takes roughly on average 8 months for a garlic to grow from a clove to a head. And so we have covered the soil there with wood chip mulch, and that has many functions. The wood chip, it suppresses the weeds, it retains soil moisture, protects the soil from the harsh sun and wind elements, and also helps to keep whatever heat there is in the soil in the frosty months in the soil. And then it also is a worm's favourite food, so soil microbial life love wood chip. And then we interplanted our garlic with a lot of shorter term crops so that we could harvest from this space in that time. So there's things like lettuces, radishes, dill, a huge diversity of crops amongst our garlic as well.
It's so interesting, and I guess that interplanted garden looks a little bit chaotic and wild. Like, can you talk about how you think about order and chaos, the balance between them when you're growing plants for food?
Yes, it's a very good point. It does look a little chaotic, and potentially to someone who doesn't recognise a garden or who recognise more maybe monoculture gardens, it does look wild, but the idea is that each crop reaches maturity and harvest time at a different time, so our chefs don't get inundated with one certain type of crop, and then the soil is never left bare as well. So it's also just creating that resilience. So if something was to come and wipe out all of our cabbages, say the white cabbage moth, then we'd still have an abundance of other crops to harvest and supply the kitchen with. So.
And weeds, even as you say that word, it sounds like, weeds are evil and out to get us. But what is your philosophy around weeds? How do you see them?
I love weeds. I mean, I love and hate weeds. They are both ends of the spectrum. But weeds have had a hard rap in gardening overall, and they can be very challenging to keep on top of. They can be very dominant, and that's one of the reasons why they have that reputation. But weeds are also messengers, so they they help to tell us what the soil may be lacking, and they have the ability to grow in soil that may be lacking something and to bring that soil back into balance. So weeds tell us things. If we can learn to listen and learn alongside our weeds, then they can be a gardener's best friend. I think it's just about learning to work with those weeds and really observing what the message is that they're trying to share.
Have you got any plants that are your favourites or ones that really amaze you in the way that they grow or their behaviour?
Absolutely. I think this season I've just been mesmerised by cauliflowers. I can't express it enough. Just the size and the weight of these collies and the flavour. They're sweet. Just the flavour, and just to watch as the head emerges from the leaves has just been the most beautiful thing. And then the time that it's taken to get to that, even my appreciation for the cauliflower that I eat, it just is amplified every time I see them growing, and it never gets old. And then of course we have a beetroot called the bullseye beetroot, and or the candy stripe, and it's red and white rings, and every time I harvest one of those, nature is just spectacular, and that's just a beautiful reminder every time.
Wow. What got you into all of this, Lydia? Like, you really know your stuff. How did you become a gardener?
Yeah, so I left school and, I didn't love being inside. I didn't love sitting down. I had a lot of energy. I wanted to be outside interacting with nature, and it was always in the garden or somewhere in nature where I felt most calm and most at peace. And so I really wanted to find a career that would support me to do that. And so I studied horticulture and then landscape architecture, but really wanted more of the plant side of things and to dive really deep into that. And so after I graduated from landscape architecture, I wanted those field skills. So I found a year-long apprenticeship in Costa Rica. And that was a full immersion program in permaculture, agroforestry, natural building, homesteading. It was everything to live a more conscious life, I suppose, and how to be more in touch with nature in everything that we do, and also how to have productive spaces around us.
And how did you end up at Lowe?
At Lowe. So I was working in Byron Bay prior to coming to Lowe, and I had been working as a contractor, and I just really wanted something that was a little more stable and consistent, especially after all of the rain that we'd had there. It was quite a challenging time to be working outside in those elements. And so the role came about. My sister's husband found this role for me online, and he sent it through, and he's like, "Lids, I found this job and it sounds just like you." And so I applied for it as soon as I read it, because I was just so surprised. I just felt like it was exactly what I'd been calling in, and within a week I had the job and couldn't resist. It's just such an amazing opportunity to be here, and always learning and growing. So
amazing. So on Dirty Linen podcast, we're usually talking to people in restaurants, and so many chefs these days love to know where their food comes from. Perhaps they are growing some of their food, but it's very rare that a restaurant gets most of its food from the business that surrounds it and supports it. What have you found about building those relationships with the people in the kitchen? Are they teaching you? Are you teaching them? How does that all work?
Yes, so I think it's very much, it's an exchange, and it's cyclical. So I'm always learning from the kitchen and they're always learning from me. But Kim always told me that the gardener is the first chef. And so that's the way we try to do things here at the Zin House, is instead of the chefs coming to me and telling me, we need this, this, this and this, I go to them and I say, hey guys, this is what's thriving in Mudgee today. How are you going to use it? Can you celebrate it? And working like that, I just feel, so honoured to see the way the chefs celebrate the food and the time and the energy that's gone into growing that food and sharing that with the guests. So it's a beautiful way to work.
What are some dishes that they've put up that you're like, I never would have thought of that?
Yeah, so the Jerusalem artichoke chips at the beginning of the meal at the moment are incredibly delicious. So they're just very thinly sliced Jerusalem artichoke with a beautiful seasoning. Never would have thought of that, and it's so delicious. Also, the cauliflower and truffle puree is amazing, and then the rotolo, the spinach and cheese pasta is delicious. So yeah, always creating beautiful dishes.
I mean, when we've talked a lot about cauliflower, I mean, how do you feel about it being pureed?
It's funny you should say that, Dani, because when the chefs came to me, they're like, we've come up with the best cauli puree. My heart broke a little bit, but I think I understand that they need to really use these ingredients and celebrate them in the way that they see fit according to the other ingredients that they have to work with. And cauliflower puree and a beautiful piece of meat, I couldn't argue with that. So.
Yeah, it is very delicious, but the cauliflowers are so beautiful to look at as well.
They are.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, so we're coming towards summer. What are you looking forward to growing and seeing in the kitchen and on the plate?
Yeah, so my favourite thing about summer is tomatoes, and I've never lived in a climate quite as dry and hot as Mudgee. So tomatoes thrive in the dry and hot climate, and so I'm very excited for homegrown tomatoes. I just think there's no flavour like them. And then, of course, pumpkins and zucchinis, fresh, crunchy cucumbers on those hot summer days, I think will be essential. And then watermelons as well. So we'll be growing a lot of those kinds of crops.
Watermelons, that's amazing. How long does it take a watermelon to grow?
Oh, it depends what variety, but my favourite variety is a little sugar baby, and they're little mini, very sweet watermelon, and they probably take, 3 months if you're lucky. So I'm hoping that, by December, January, we'll have them on the table.
And Lowe's a very interconnected business with so many different arms to it, and it always seems like there's about 50 or perhaps 100 or 200 things about to happen or going on or in planning and production. What's it like to work here? Like, how do all the pieces fit together?
It's the most beautiful work environment, and just to see how all of the pieces do really work together. So the garden doesn't just supply the Zin House restaurant. Whatever excess we have also goes into the events kitchen in the pavilion and is used for events, and then also onto the bakery at Althea. So they have a beautiful savoury pastry at the moment that celebrates the silver beet and rainbow chard coming out of the garden. So it's just beautiful to watch how everything works together and how connected we all are, and there's nothing better than a fresh croissant before you start your day in the garden and a beautiful meal to end that. So it's a beautiful workplace to be a part of, and just so much going on, as you say.
What sort of, I guess, penny drop moments do you see in some of your guests when they come here? You know, do you see their minds expanded, before your very eyes?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of my favourite things about the garden walks, and just getting people into the garden in general, because I remember how I felt when I first harvested. The very first crop I ever harvested was a gigantic zucchini. And I was just mesmerised. I was like, whoa, we can grow this ourselves. And so to see that same awe and wonder in anyone who walks through the garden, especially the cauliflowers, honestly, they're just people's eyes light up when they see these, and it's just so beautiful. So absolutely. And the little apricots that are on the trees at the moment, and seeing the connection that people make between just observing how these fruits that we see in groceries actually grows, and engaging them in that is so special.
What change would you like to see spring from these realisations, whether it's, as someone who's dining or has a balcony or is a chef wondering what to put on their next menu?
I would really love to see people giving it a go themselves. That's, and I know that it can sometimes seem very overwhelming, but if you just get some seeds in the ground, it's incredible to watch them grow. But if you don't want to start out on your own just yet, just engaging with local farmers and local producers and supporting them in whatever way that you can, whether that's to go for a garden walk or, spend a day in the garden or on the farm with them, little things like that. I just think the engagement is the biggest thing, and that's what changed me, was engaging in spaces like this. And so if I can get more people engaging and planting a seed that grows curiosity and interest, then that's the biggest thing.
Love it. Well, I feel like you've planted seeds in this conversation, Lydia. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today and helping build this picture of Lowe.
Yay, thank you so much, Dani.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This